Hi. Few, if any, spirit categories have the immense flavor and style variations as those created from sugarcane, be it cane juice or molasses or a blend of both. These cane spirits are called rums and have been made across Asia, Europe, and the Americas, but we'll be concentrating on those made in the Caribbean in this lecture. With the separate colonial influences playing a part in subsequent styles across the region, there's plenty to study just in this region, trust me. From what we've learned about distillation and fermentation so far, it can't be a surprise that a perennial grass whose stalks are full of sugar might be used to extract fermentable sugar for eventual distillation. As early as 500 BC, word had spread to Europe of the reeds that produced honey without bees from the Far East. Soon, sugarcane was grown wherever it would grow. Spirits made from sugarcane are often called rums and are made anywhere sugarcane grows, which happens in tropical and subtropical latitudes. But cane spirits are also made in more temperate latitudes, as molasses is very shelf stable and doesn't spoil easily. But we're going to focus our attention in this lecture on the Caribbean basin, which has a global reputation for these spirits. Called rums throughout this region and Cachaça in Brazil, the variety of styles is second to none. We have clean and bright with subtle herb and grass notes to deep tropical flavored rancioed versions. It's all possible and done throughout the Caribbean. Now, due to colonization, this area has been ruled by various European countries who have their own notions of what makes a wine or spirit good. These traditions play out in the styles throughout the region. And as we are dealing with multiple countries, there is no overarching international rules on what a rum is, except that it's made from sugarcane. So our sugar-laden grass is harvested at least once a year. And though it's perennial, it really only lasts about 5 years in production. The sucrose is locked in the stems, so the leaves are stripped off and only the stems go in for crushing and pressing. Now, as we should remember from the raw materials lecture, a sugary liquid is very vulnerable to spoilage, so the juice is quickly cooked to pasteurize it or cooked as part of sugar production. Now, our distillate can be made from cane juice or from cane syrup, which is juice that's been boiled and subsequently concentrated. The sugar crystals are removed during this boiling process, and after you've pulled those crystals out and boiled it again a few more times, we're left with a dark byproduct called molasses. The cane syrup and molasses both can be safely stored, and a little dilution to either, and you can still find sugar to ferment and then distill. These rums from molasses and later stage syrups can bring flavors of toffee, caramel, and brown sugar. During fermentation, yeasts and environments are often utilized to create strong esterification, which can bring strong tropical and pungent flavors to the rum. Slow, open-top fermentation tanks with ambient yeast and bacteria are used in Jamaica, for instance, to maximize the potential esterification. Other rums, say in Cuba, often minimize esterification and use cultured yeast in controlled environments. Now, hopefully at this stage of your study, you're beginning to predict the distillation technologies that might be deployed if we are in Jamaica and wanting intense, high character in the spirit, or if we are in Cuba and our customers are expecting a lighter flavored, clean, and more pure expression. Our Cuban style, relocated to Puerto Rico post-revolution, is represented by Bacardi, which is the largest rum distillery in the world. These columns can create a very highly rectified spirit, or remember, spirit with high ABV, up around 90% ABV. Now remember, the yeasts, they have been using a proprietary yeast strain the same strain they've been using for over 150 years. These types of spirits are referred to as light marks. At the other end of the spectrum are the heavy marks, or the high ester spirits. Now, you can get esters that bring earthy forest floor character or esters that bring very intense fruity character. These are primarily created during fermentation and in open tanks where whatever ambient yeast and bacteria are present, and they do their business over weeks rather than days. Then we have all sorts of pot stills or modified columns that can be used as well. This 200-year-old pot will lead over to little retorts, which are like another mini pot. There's mind-numbing variations of pot still technology in use throughout the Caribbean. Some producers have wooden pot stills next to stainless columns, next to a modified column also made of wood, all giving options as to what type of spirit they can put into a blend or sell outright. And blends are very important in rum. This variety within the separate components gives remarkable opportunities for all sorts of styles and flavors. Then with oak aging, we add a new dimension, with the warm climate in the Caribbean accelerating those interactions between spirit and barrel. As far as finishing, often caramel color is used to give the expected dark color. Sometimes charcoal filtering is used to remove any color from oak aging. And sometimes we have sweetening, and other times it may be prohibited. It's a frustratingly diverse, or some say Wild West category, but that's also what breeds delicious experimentation and historic styles unencumbered by rules. Now, as you might expect, trying to classify or sort rum into an easily understandable quality or stylistic framework is about impossible. You'll see white rums that may be an overproof Barbados high ester version, a light soft caramel molasses-based Cuban style, or a grassy herbal variety from Martinique. With the color additions, the color doesn't necessarily mean anything either if it's dark. So how do we grasp rum in an educational setting? Well, besides, of course, in a glass with both hands, there are traditions across the region that lead to typical, if not always mandated, styles. Now, while many of these Caribbean countries fought long and hard to escape the shackles of slavery and colonial oppression, it's hard not to connect their current rum styles with the styles brought by the occupiers. We'll look briefly at Spanish, French, and English influences and their styles throughout the regions, even though many countries have owned these styles for centuries and can certainly claim full ownership today. Now, our Martinique and Guadeloupe have been French overseas departments since the 1940s. Indeed, Martinique citizens are part of the EU. And as you might expect from any studies of French wine or spirits, there is a classification system. And though molasses-based rums are permitted, the best-known rums here are those made from sugar cane juice and feature the herbal grassy notes you might expect. The Rhum Agricoles of Martinique operate under similar structure as cognac, although probably closer to Armagnac. There is an unaged category done dry with those vibrant, bright, grassy notes deemed Rhum Blanc, with only inert vessel storage allowed. And then a Rhum Vieux, or old rum, that are aged a minimum of 3 years in oak. This oak aging can often mask those typical agricole characteristics, but quality producers can manage to have a delicate balance between the two. Stills are often a modified column still, similar to the ones that we see in Armagnac. Now on to the previously English colony of Jamaica. We have styles here developed for the British Navy, and Jamaican rums are best known for dry, high character, as in high ester, aged or unaged rums from molasses. Columns and pots are used, but funky, crazy, high ester pot still versions are still very well appreciated by rum aficionados. Legally, Jamaican rum cannot be sweetened, but if the distillate leaves the country and is bottled elsewhere, sugar can be added with no notice given. For instance, Myers says rum from Jamaica, but it is bottled for some reason in the Bahamas, and Diageo, who now owns the brand, won't say if sugar is added. Now, Barbados was another English colony and where distillation actually began in the Caribbean. Here we have oak-aged styles from both pot and columns with notes of vanilla and spice from the barrel and lots of caramel, toffee, and brown sugar. Clear rums have often had oak-imparted color removed. Now, sweetening happens, but no one really brags about it. Guyana was British at one time as well, and although only one distillery survives after 300 years of history, the Demerara distillery is a huge producer and also a home to an incredible collection of stills, many of which are still in use there, giving them the ability to craft rums of almost limitless range. You do see these British-linked distilleries releasing overproof varieties, dating back to the days of sailing ships where a 57.15% ABV matched up to the English-derived 100 proof, which isn't in use anymore. Now we go to the Spanish-influenced countries or past territories. Cuban rums are tightly regulated with mandated column still production to very high rectification. Old oak barrels are required for maturation, with the colorless ones usually being charcoal filtered to remove any color. These are dry with delicate brown sugar and toffee aromas. Longer aging in oak does happen, and those will show color and some vanilla and spice from the oak, but it's usually subtle and mellow. A quick jump across to Puerto Rico sees similar styles and processes to Cuba in rum production with columns and molasses-based rums, despite the animosity between the US and Cuba. Now, mandated aging and charcoal filtration of the white rums here is also the norm. And then throughout Central and South America, rum is also produced, including in Panama, Venezuela, Colombia, and Guatemala. They tend to use molasses and oak aging, and sweetening is commonplace. Now, a huge by volume category of spirit is Brazil's sugarcane juice-based Cachaça. As Brazil is the largest global producer of sugarcane, so they are also the world's largest producer of sugarcane spirit. However, they tend to drink most of it locally. There's no still or rectification limits, so we can have the versions that are grassy and herbal, like an Agricole, or very light and clean from columns, like a Cuban variety. Unlike Cubans, though, most are unaged, and some are aged in oak or other indigenous hardwoods, making for some very unique expressions. And then we have rums that are international in style, where they are blended from finished rums from multiple countries and or aged after distillation somewhere else, even in Europe, which is often a completely different aging environment than where the rums were distilled. These are just called blended rums or non-distiller bottlings, and may be of any style or quality, but not necessarily inferior by any means. So from this lecture, you should be familiar with how sugarcane grows and how molasses, syrup, and juice are produced. Now, the concepts of light and heavy marks should be understood. The creation of esters and high ester rums and how that might be accomplished. Also, regional styles and classifications across the Caribbean region and into the Americas, including Brazil's Cachaça. How distillation and fermentation techniques are deployed to create those styles, and then how blending, finishing, and maturation play into the rums we see in the market today. Bless up.